So in this screencast, we're going to look at some loop projects. So in the first one, we're going to use a repeat loop. We're going to create a new project, and when the button A is pressed, we create a counter variable. We're going to set that counter to 5, and then we're going to repeat 6 times, show the number counter, and then change the counter by -1 each time. So we're going to count down from 5. So it's going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and we're going to use a loop for that. So let's just go to makecode.com now and do that. So here in makecode.com, we're going to get rid of our onStart and our forever. We're going to go to input, and we're going to say when button A is pressed, and we're going to create a variable. So we're going to make a variable. We're going to call it counter. Click OK. Then we're going to set counter to 5. I've mistyped that, it should be counter, and we're going to set it equal to 5. And then we're going to go into loops here, and you see we've got repeat 4 times. This time we're going to repeat 6 times, and we're going to show the number. So we're going to show the number counter, and then we're going to set counter or change counter by -1. So if we test this now on button A pressed, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. So that is repeating it 6 times. So what we're doing here, and often you'll find when you're using loops, there are kind of 4 things that you need to be aware of. First is initializing your variable, and we're doing that by setting counter to 5. Then you have your condition, and here the condition is that it's repeating it 6 times. So somewhere in the background, it's keeping track of how many times have I done this already. And once it gets to 6, then it will fall out of it. The next thing you have is you have what are we actually doing within this loop. And in this particular case, all we're doing within the loop is that we're showing the number counter. And then the final thing is your incrementation. And here our incrementation, or in this case decrementation, is we're changing the value of counter by down by 1 every time. So we're setting it from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So those are really the 4 things you would tend to do within a loop. Initialization, you've got your condition, you've got what are you doing within the loop, and then you've got your incrementation or decrementation. So that's our repeat example. So we'll just have a look at another project now and see how we can use another one of the loop structures. In this project, we're going to use a while loop. So we're going to create a new project, and within that new project, we're going to have onStart. So when it starts, we're going to create a variable called pressed, and we're going to set the value of that variable to false. Then we're going to have a for loop that checks to see if the value of that pressed variable is false. As long as it is, it will show press A, and then it will pause for 150 milliseconds. And then outside of, once it falls out of that loop, we're going to show the string by. Now separate to that, we're going to have the on button A pressed, and that will set pressed to true. So there are 2 separate things going on separately. And then once you go back to the condition within the while loop again, so it's constantly checking it. And once the value is set to true, then it will fall out and it will show the string by. So let's go to makecode.com and make that happen. In our new project here, we have the onStart and the forever. I'm just going to get rid of the forever because I don't need that one. So onStart, we're going to create a variable. So we go into make a variable, so variables, and make a variable. I'm going to call it pressed and click OK. And then once I've done that, I can set pressed to false. So I'm going to change item to pressed, and then I'm going to go into logic and get my false value and bring that across. So now I've set up my variable and set it the value false. Then I'm going to go into my loops. I'm going to pull across the while. So I'm saying while. Now I need to create my condition. So I'm going to go into a logic, and I'm going to get the equality. So when something equals something. And then I'm saying while pressed is equal to false. And I'm going to go into logic again and find my false there and drag that across. So this is going to check to see if the value of that variable pressed is false. While it is, then it's going to do something. And what it's going to do is it's going to show the text. I need to go into basic, show string, press A. And you'll see over on the left hand side here that it's bringing up press A. Alright, so this is as I want it to be. The next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to pause, and I'm going to get it to pause for 150 seconds. Okay, so that's my loop done. Now, once I fall out of the loop, I want to show the string by. So I'm just going to pull across show string and bring it outside of the loop, not inside of it. And here it's going to show by. And then the last thing I have to do is go to input on button A pressed. So when the button A is pressed, I just want to change my variable. So set pressed to true. So I'm going to go into logic and find true. So what's going to happen is it's going to set pressed to true. The next time within the loop that it checks to see the value of pressed is equal to false, it will find that it's not true, and then it will fall out and show the string by. So here it's saying press A, and that's been happening constantly in the background. I'm actually just going to restart here. So here it will start press A, it's telling me. So I'm not pressing A, so nothing is happening. It's pausing, it's showing press A again. And now I'm going to press the button A, and now you'll see that it's been set to, pressed has been set to true, and it just says by. So that's the end of that project. So that's working as we want it to work. And that will be a typical example of the while loop. Now notice again, within this, you have your initialization. We're setting pressed to false. You've got your condition, while pressed is equal to false. You've got what are you doing within the loop, which is the show string pressed A, and then the pause, and then finally you've got your incrementation, and the incrementation in this case is happening in the on button A pressed. In this project we're going to use a for loop, so we're going to create a new project, and when the button A is pressed we're going to display the numbers from 3 to 8. So we're going to use the index in the for loop to actually work out. So we're going to have, our index is going to go from 0 to 5 because we want to display 6 numbers here. The first thing we're going to do is get rid of our on start and our forever block in our new project, and we're going to go to input and on button A pressed. Now what we're going to do in here is we're going to go to the loop and we're going to use the for loop, so for index from 0 to 4. Now I'm going to change my index from 0 to 4 to 0 to 5 because remember we want to display 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so our loop needs to go through 6 times. So our index is going to go from 0 to 5. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to show the number. And I'm just going to be a little bit, I suppose, slick in this one because I'm going to go to math here and there's a plus block. So I'm going to show the number, and you'll notice here there's an index as a variable. Now if I go into variables, my index shows in there, so I can access the index of the loop. So I can bring in the index here. So show number index plus 3, because remember my starting number is going to start at 3. So I'm going to show 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, we'll just go and 8. And then so when the index is 0, we're going to show 3. When the index is 1, we're going to show 4. When the index is 2, we're going to show 5, and so on. So if I add 3 onto every index, that will give me my number. I'm just going to put in a little bit of a pause because otherwise it will go very quickly. So let's test this and see does it work. So if I press the A button, it shows 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So using the for, we can see that you have your initialization, your condition, and your incrementation all happens within that from index from 0 to 5. So it deals with the starting value, which is a 0. It deals with the incrementation, which means that it increments at 1 each time. It deals with all of that, and it checks the condition to see, have I gotten to 5 with my index? If I have, then I fall out of it. So all you really have to deal with here is just, where am I going to? How many times am I doing this? And then what am I doing within the loop? So that's quite a straightforward one that you can use, and that's the for loop. The next project we're going to look at, we'll be looking at arrays and loops. Our final project in this screencast is looking at how we can use loops to loop through the values in an array. So in the screencast that we did on arrays, we were looking at how we can access the values and looking at the indices, and we did it without using loops. I want to show you now how arrays and loops kind of go hand in hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. On start, we're going to create an array of variables to hold the values 5, 7, and 9. So we're keeping it very straightforward. And then we're going to loop through the array indices and print out the value at each index. So again, we're going to get rid of the forever because we don't need it this time. So on start, we're going to create an array. So I'm going to go to variables. I'm going to make a variable called list. And click OK. And I'm going to set list to, I'm going to change it to list, and I'm going to go to arrays and create an array. Now remember, if I want to create an array with more than one index, I just add in the values. So here I want to create an array with 3 values, and there are 3 numeric values. I'm just going to close that, and then I'm going to go to math and find the zeros so that I can put in values. So if I go into math again and find the 0 and just drag it across. So now I'm going 5 and 7 and 9. So that's set up my array with my 3 values. Next I want to go to loops, and I'm going for index from 0 to, and in this case my index is going from 0 to 2 because I've got 3 values, and I'm going to do show number, and the number I'm going to show is, I'm going to just go into arrays here because I want to get the value. So list get value at, and instead of 0 every time, I can use the index variable that I have here. So I'm just going to go to variables, pull across my index. So this is saying get the value at index of the list. So you'll see here on the left hand side it's showing those. So on start, let's start it again, and it's showing 5 and then 7 and then 9, exactly as I wanted to. So this is a typical example of using a loop. Now you could use any of the loops here. You could use the repeat loop. You could just repeat it 3 times, but then you're going to have to set up an index variable. You could use the while loop. Again, you'd have to set up an index variable that you can access. So in this case, I would say that the for loop fits perfectly because it already has an index predefined as such, and then you can use that index. So I hope you found these projects useful for loops, and we'll look at some other things in the next screencast.